Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you everybody for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed episode number 57 with Wes Tankersley. Again, just anytime I get another podcaster on, it's really interesting to hear their story, how they do things, and shaping success. I wish that guy a lot of success on his podcast. Little wordplay there. But we're back with a brand new guest. Known this guy for a very long time. Super interesting guy, and I really want to tell his story today. Welcome to the podcast, Larry, the landlord, aka the Sheik, Landless. How you doing, Larry?
I'm good. How you doing? How you doing, everybody?
You're good, man. So, like, I threw those two nicknames out there because I know about the landlord. I remember that's when you were doing some fighting, but Sheik's kind of an interesting nickname there. I only know about that one because your nephew Matt, he told me you were called the Sheik. What's up with the Sheik nickname? I feel like there's a lot of history there.
Well, the Sheik was I had an afro in high school, grammar school, junior high and high school, kind of a mullet type of thing. So wherever I went, we were up to mischief. I stood out. Everybody else had the Eric Estrada hair, feathered, cholo, and I had the afro, so I stood out. So I decided to disguise it. I put a towel over my head. We went to go toilet paper a friend's house. I put a bandana around it, and they said they saw a Sheik. So the nickname stuck, and my family to this day, years, still call me the Sheik.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, like, damn, is that like the Iron Sheik? But I'm like, no, that must have been before the Iron Sheik.
Yeah, that was some funny stuff. Plus, my uncles, they're always teasing, and they always said that I was adopted. The Arabs left me on the doorstep. We're all Mexican, and I didn't quite look like everybody else, I guess. I looked more less Mexican, more white, especially back then. So they would tease me and say that I was dropped off on the doorstep by Arabs.
Well, there you go. Now we know that one there. I like to title my episodes on the podcast. Sometimes I do it after the interview. Sometimes I do it before. Yours I did before, man. It was kind of like a word play off of all the L's and whatnot. Larry Landless, like a local living legend. Now I do that not to blow smoke up your ass. I know you're a humble guy, but it's true, man. I think at the peak of MMA popularity was like 2007, 2008. That's when I did a couple of those smokers at Ring of Fire. And anytime people would talk about MMA, because people used to talk about it a lot back then. It was huge. I mean, it's still big, but I think the peak was around 2007, 2008. That time. And anytime somebody wanted to kind of, brag or flex a little bit about, I know this guy that does MMA, like, he's a ref and he has his own school and everything. I'm like, man, you're talking about Larry. I know Larry. And they're like, yeah, Larry Landless. Yeah. So it seems like everywhere I went, man, everybody knew your name, right? So you've been out there, you've been around, and I wonder if it was because of the wrestling thing, because of MMA, or like, your old days as a bouncer too, or just a combination of.
A couple of things, kind of funny. First of all, Fabian and I met years ago. My nephew Matt was wrestling with them at Mountain View High School, and I used to go there and kind of like do a little clinic or whatever for I was there to help out my nephew. But you were the heavyweight, and you were the one that was like kind of the harder worker of the group. You're determined. And then years later, you got involved with MMA, and I was around, you were around, Matt was around, and, you kept your friendship with Matt. I appreciate Matt's my nephew from my ex-wife. And, I still love him to this day, of course. The wrestling stuff. I after high school, I started coaching a junior high program right out of high school. So I was really busy with wrestling, coaching over the years. We had some great teams. We won CIF one year, took second. We took third in state one year. During that time, I came across two big names in MMA because of wrestling. Now, when we won CIF, Victor Valley took third. But when we went to state, we took third. Victor Valley won it. And guess who one of the wrestlers on Victor Valley was? It was Dan Henderson. Yeah, he was on the team at that time. So we were opponents. And I wrestled one year with the Jets, and Dan was, a legend in the Jets, California Jets. So, we kept a good friendship. And then later on, we went to a couple of tournaments with my Keppel team I was coaching, and I ran across this kid, big kid, strong, tough wrestler, and he would just slaughter my poor guy. My guy was a freshman. I remember one time at a tournament, I asked him, I said, hey, I begged him, I said, take it easy on my guy, okay, please. And he's like, okay, he smiled and grinned. That was Tito Ortiz.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I remember, when you were starting up your like submission factory and stuff like that, Matt would always kind of pull out like pictures of like, oh, here's me training with Tito. And, you kind of knew a lot of the guys that became like the big names, the celebrity names in MMA before it was a celebrity status thing, right? So, I mean, even to this day, I still see like, Dan Henderson or Randy Couture will pop up and wish you a happy birthday. I'm like, damn, Larry knows everybody.
Yeah, it was funny because we just connect. Like Randy, he just likes my stuff on my page on Facebook, what have you. But we have similar views politically and socially, what have you. But when I run into him at an event, well, he treats me really well.
Nice.
We just have a good connect. Also with a lot of different people, kind of like mostly the wrestlers. I have a really good connect with Don Fry and Chemo.
I think Tito Ortiz mentioned you in his book that he got his start at one of your tournaments, right?
Yes, and in fact, I wanted to show the fight on, just make it public, and he told me, if you ever show it, I'll sue you. That's okay, I won't show it. I promise, Tito. He wants his royalties. So someday, maybe on a historical thing, maybe I'll sell the rights to it. And he killed my guy. Killed my guy. But yeah, his first fight before the UFC was at one of my little underground tournaments, and yeah, it was a good day for us.
Yeah. Now, you were in there really early as a ref. I think that was before it kind of hit its peak popularity, right? Just kind of when it was still like an underground type of thing. You did the wrestling thing you still coach, but I mean, you did the wrestling coaching thing for a while. And how did you transition into the world of reffing MMA? Did you try to be a fighter first? I know you fought after, but how did you transition into the reffing world?
Oh, it's crazy. The timing was really weird. 1993, November of 1993. I was just bouncing, and I just resigned my position at Marquette High School as a wrestling coach. I had a national champ. He went undefeated, won state, and won the nationals, Anthony Valencia. And I was kind of I was 28. I just turned 29 at the time in May, before that November. And I really didn't know exactly what I was going to do. There was a lot of options. I was offered a job with the school district. I started working with the school district, and lo and behold, I saw these advertisements for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And it just said judo, wrestling, kickboxing, and sambo, and Muay Thai, Taekwondo, karate. And it was interesting. The first show came out. I watched it with a bunch of friends, and we were hooked. After that first show, it was funny because we used to always train in my garage in Monterey Park. I used to roll out the mats, and it was all about wrestling or judo. I did judo. And we did some self-defense stuff. But when the UFC hit, people came from all over to my garage like, hey, we used to do this back in the day when, because as a bouncer, you kind of get into it.
Yeah.
And, my thing is wrestling and judo, and there's takedowns involved. So clinching and takedowns was a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, we just added a little striking. And next thing you know, we had some basic MMA going on. And as time went on, the game got refined.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, which number UFC do you remember like first reffing? Was it like in the 20s or like in the teens?
It was UFC 34 through UFC 46.
I see.
I ref all those in between. Mm-hmm. I was going to go on an earlier show, but there was a conflict with King of the Cage, and which I was working with pretty much a lot, and the UFC on the same weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I had loyalty, and I didn't want any problems, so I asked permission, and it didn't, there was a conflict of dates.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get on that first show, which would have been UFC 33. I got on UFC 34.
Okay, nice. Now I think, and I hate to bring this up, Larry, but I know you've probably talked about it before. The biggest thing that a lot of people who don't know you personally probably know you for online is the Phil Baroni incident, right?
I can't live it down.
So I remember like even just recently, when people are talking about like, referee mistake moments or whatever, people are still talking shit online about it, Yeah. And it's like, hey, like it happened so long ago, like, you're still reffing, you're still a reputable, good ref. You ask anybody, they'll be like, yeah, Larry's a good ref, good judge, right? But talk about that a little, man. Like, did you know what was going on?
There was actually two mistakes made on my part. One, when Evan Tanner, God rest his soul, when Evan Tanner got the cut in his eye, it was really close to the eye, and I wanted to have it looked at. So I stopped the action to have a doctor look at it. At that time, one of the gatekeepers at the UFC let Dan Henderson in, and that's illegal. You can't do that. And, I told Dan, hey, you can't be in here. So that was a big mistake on my part. It was not having all that total control. As the fight went on, Evan turned the tides on Evan Tanner turned the tides on Phil. Mm-hmm. And then he had him in a really bad position. He had him up against the cage, took him down, and was putting it on him. I mean, forearms just raining. Well, I just said, protect yourself, when they first got the takedown. But Phil looked right at me and was yelling something, and I didn't know what he was saying. Mm-hmm. Everyone was screaming, and so I said, "You want out?" I asked him the question, which was totally improper on my part. Now, as we teach other referees, when I go to Herb's school to, I give my input, that question comes up, and I tell him, that was a big mistake. I place myself on the cross for that. Don't ever make that same mistake. I learned something really in a horrible way that lasts to this day. That was one of my biggest blunders. But, I did say it. I said, hey, you want out? I don't know what he was saying. He was saying, yeah. Like, I guess he said, are you okay? You want to continue, whatever. And in the wording between him saying, yeah, he wasn't saying, yeah, he wants out. He's saying, yeah, he's fine. I'm okay. Okay. The okay sounds like okay, I want out. So in the wording of everything, I stopped the fight. The elbows were there, the forearms were there, legal shots, by the way. It was a huge mistake. It was a huge blunder on my part. It was a huge stain on my reputation. I've reffed thousands of fights since then. But that's always going to be on my record, and it's always, and unfortunately it was on Phil's record as a loss. And I felt bad for Phil. Phil called me the following weekend to apologize for for everything that went on. And I said, man, I owe you an apology. You know, I went online to try and, you know, clear the air, but, you know, people just, you know, there's a lot of comedians on Facebook, and people are lonely. They want to, you know, just get jokes in. So, you know, they bring it up in a bad way. You know, I deserve it. I just take it on the chin and move on.
I mean, you took the Phil Baroni punch on the chin pretty well too, Larry.
I don't know if he stepped into that one. I think he kind of just swiped at me, but
yeah.
Lucky me.
But I think that was one moment where they're like, "Damn, Larry's a tough guy." You know, maybe that's why you tried your hand at the you know, actually MMA fighting.
Well, the truth is, the fight was already scheduled prior to the Phil Baroni incident. In fact, it happened 2 weeks later, I believe.
Wow.
As you know, I went through a divorce, and I was in the divorce. You know, the split happened in June, and my fight was in, I believe, late November, early December that year. I was supposed to fight sometime in August, but I guess they felt it was too soon. So I just, you know, did what I can to work out a little. Thank God Herb Dean, Michael Begg reached out to me and, you know, did what they can to help me out. And you know, there was a lot of cloudy judgment on my part with everything going on. You know, at that time, it was just a bad time in my life. And instead of turning to alcohol or drugs or something like that, which I've never, you know, that's just not me.
Right.
I said, hey, I might as well just fight while I can, get a couple in, and, you know, and it turned out okay. I'm not, you know.
I mean, because you did it at a pretty late stage in your life, right? Kind of like, was it your late 30s, early 40s, something like that?
It was my late 30s, early 40s. Yeah, I was like 39 when I fought that first fight. After that, I was like 40, 41. There was a couple of fights in between I had with other promoters that just fell off. I was supposed to fight a couple of guys here and there. And, you know, I was like, okay, sure. You know, I'll do it, you know, and I was like getting ready, and I'm like, what happened to, you know, oh, the guy pulled out. Well, nobody told me, you know, so, and it was always just guys, you know, that just, I guess, wanted to make a name off me somehow. You know, if you want to make a name off a fighter. I was just it was kind of recreational at the time. And, you know, beating me is not proving nothing. You know, I give credit to the people that I did fight, but, you know, there were fair matchups in regards to, like, you know, physical abilities. Yeah, they didn't throw me into a UFC title fight against, like, Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, for sure. At that time, did you have your submission factory up and running, or was that something that was in the works?
No, the submission factory was up and running in La Puente. That's part of, you know, I guess that's a little bit of the reason why we had the divorce. I kept it on for another year. It just became a nightmare. I laid it down. Mike Begg got it back up and running, and he's going to open another place pretty soon in the Alhambra area, it looks like.
Okay.
Mike Begg is, you know, when you talk about friends, you know, loyalty means a lot. Mike Begg is one of those people. He's loyal, and he has my full permission to utilize the Submission Factory name and do what he can to keep it going in any way, shape, or form, to brand it, what have you. And I couldn't have picked a better guy.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool name, man. Like a cool little logo. You know, I think you did the whole art look before Tap Out even.
No, Tap Out beat me to the punch.
Oh, did they? Okay.
They did. You know, I met Dan and Charles and Scrape, and there was two other guys before that, Joker and I forget the other guy's name. They started at a jiu-jitsu tournament, and then Joe Charles did an underground show at a hotel in not North Hollywood, more north of that. It was Simi Valley area, I believe.
Okay.
Nice hotel. And we're having an MMA show. There's a cage in there, and we're like, whoa. He had me ref it. I walk in, and Charles pulls up with the truck. He goes, Larry Landless, hey, give us a hand. I go, yeah, sure. You know, I was loading boxes, the first Tap Out shirts. He goes, hey, what are you wearing when you ref? I go, I don't know. I just got a black shirt. And he goes, he gave me a black tap out shirt. And he says, "You wear this? This is our new business." I guess, sure, another dime a dozen business. I wore it and it turned huge, and I regret probably washing my car with that shirt at some point, or wiping off the dirt on the window or whatever. That shirt was classic. And then over the years, they had given me so many shirts, hats, what have you. And God, it was, that was their first MMA match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool, man. Like, it's just kind of like the infancy of everything, because as everybody sees now, MMA is blown up so huge, but it was really kind of like a super like niche thing. You had to go out and seek it back in the day, right? I mean, it's not even that long ago. I'm talking about 2000, right? Year 2000. It was still kind of like nobody really knew about it.
Well, I was working for the California State Athletic Commission in 2006, mm-hmm. and I was doing other shows here and there. I'd travel to Hawaii, Guam, what have you. I had great shows in Guam and Hawaii. I did all the Rumble on the Rock. Mm-hmm. I reffed all the BJ Penn fights on Rumble on the Rock. And I did a K1 fight, and it was a K1 associated with Rumble on the Rock at the Loa Bowl. Mm-hmm. It was BJ Penn versus Renzo Gracie. But during that time, I was teaching at Ring of Fire. Mm-hmm. And when they used to have their little underground shows, I got out of Dodge. I couldn't be associated with it. Mm-hmm. So when you guys would go there to do and they pull in a good crowd. Mm-hmm. They pull in a good crowd. And when they do their shows, I would just watch the videos the next week and just, wow. I just couldn't be there. Working for the California State Athletic Commission, I couldn't be there. In fact, it was the California State Athletic Commission that shut them down.
At the old Monrovia location, yeah.
Yes. It had a nice gym there. It was big. It was a nice gym.
Yeah, I felt, like it was a big deal. It was like, because the way I remember kind of jumping into that first fight, Matt's just kind of, he and I were bouncers together, and he's like, "Hey, you want to fight in a month?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" I'd never thrown a punch in an actual, sanctioned or unsanctioned in this case in a fight, in an actual structured fight. I'd never thrown a punch or a kick. I've only wrestled, and so we got in there and just kind of learned as much as I could, I'm like, I'm just trying to emulate what I see on TV, but it was cool, man.
If I remember correctly, I think you used to come over to the gym to work out with us a lot.
Yeah. When, in between, cause I had a couple jobs and was going to school, but as much as I could, I wanted to get in there, just, learn a little something, because, it was cool because Matt kind of dragged me in there as like a practice partner, and I always kind of felt bad. I'm like, shit, I should be paying money to come here, but I'm like,
I did Matt tell you how I dragged him into it?
No, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah. Well, Matt is actually the nephew of my ex-wife. Matt, my sister-in-law, Matt's mom, had lost her house. They were living out in Temecula. So he went through a hard time. Came to live with the grandmother for a little while in Almani. Matt was kind of just drifting around, and it didn't look like, he could have gone to a really bad route. And I just had the sense to say, hey, his cousin Edward had already been doing jiu-jitsu and MMA with us for about at least 2 years or so prior to that. Actually, it was longer than that. He'd been with us for quite a few years, but Matt being in Temecula, I couldn't, I'd see him on weekends, if anything.
Yeah.
So now that he was living in Almani, I just felt like, what, he's going to get into trouble. I just started dragging him to practice. And he took to it. He's quiet, but you could tell he liked it, and he took to it. He was, he's more so a stand-up kickboxer type of fighter, which surprised me. Really good kicks. He's a good sparring partner, tough kid. Edward was more jiu-jitsu oriented submission guy.
Yeah.
So if I could have gotten both of them to even out the skills, now I would have had two great ones, But I think I'm really happy and proud of Matt's efforts at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a tough time for him, and then he got it. He never wrestled before. When he got to Mountain View and El Monte, he started wrestling, and he did good.
Yep.
He did good, and he never wrestled before, and he just did good. I'd take him to. He'd go to the UFC fights. I had that extra ticket. He'd go, and he enjoyed the life, and he would just stand there and just watch me talk to people, and he just kind of just loved being around it. I took him to fights, King of the Cage a lot. He he kind of followed me everywhere, and it was good. He was really, it was really nice. He's got his boys now, and hopefully he's going to get them involved in wrestling and all that, and jiu-jitsu, and we'll see another generation of the Reeses.
Hopefully, man. I gotta catch up with that guy. I haven't heard from him in years. Yeah, we used to hang out all the time.
I saw him more than a year ago before the COVID. I did a fight at when Tito fought Chuck Liddell. He was there, and he, when it was over, he waved me down. I went. That was the last I seen him. I don't see him too often. After the divorce, his family kind of separate. Well, his cousin Edward and I are when we see each other, we're always close. And then Matt and a few others, but is what it is.
Yep. Now, some other things I wanted to kind of dig into, Larry, because it's very interesting, right? Like you kind of, other than MMA, and wrestling and everything, you kind of along the way somewhere picked up like some cool, like little cameo movie roles and stuff like that, huh? Like I see you do, I saw you with like shotguns and everything, and like doing little action roles. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that, like, okay, I'll be honest, a lot. I won't mention names, but I have a guy I coached in wrestling years ago, and he's a director. He's a writer, director, what have you. He's had a few little projects, anything. Maybe Angel Town is the movie you probably remember. It was a Oliver Gruner, kickboxing guy back in the 80s, and comes to East LA and beats up cholos. Well, he was in that movie. He was the co-star of the movie. But he's had a few projects, and because I coached him in wrestling and kind of have a friendship going, he's always invited me to be in projects or so. There was a movie that I was looking forward to being a co-star in about the Donna football team in Donna, Texas. They're really close to the border, and it's a team from the early 60s. There was like 15 guys on the team, mostly Mexican, and they won the state championship. The story's incredible. I was supposed to play Coach Lore, who was one of the assistant coaches, who was very inspirational in getting them, going in on this adventure. They would show up to football games and go up north to play, other Texas teams, and they were throwing tortillas and beans at these guys.
Yeesh.
So there was a lot of racism they had to face. So with 15 guys going against teams of like 40, 50 guys, they were beating them, and they won the state championship. So it was a great story. The project never got off the ground, and I would have had speaking parts and everything. There was a movie before that. I did Roadhouse. I did a scene in Roadhouse.
Were you in Roadhouse?
Yeah. You'll have to sit next to me, and I'll have to point to the guy. One of those types of scenes. But I got a speaking part in a movie called Always with Richard Dreyfuss and Holly Hunter. And it was a Steven Spielberg movie. Nice. And they on the set, they pulled people apart, had us kind of read. I've never, I was just an extra. I was just kind of showing up like an extra. My football coach is the one that got me into it, Dwayne Allen. He played for the Rams. So he kind of got me into this. And I would show up, and they had us read for these parts. I read, and they selected me. Hey, Drinda, you going to save me a dance for later? That was my line. It got cut, but I'm still in the titles, and I still get like $2 checks every like 6 to 8 months.
Hey, can't beat that, right? There's some wiener schnitzel for you.
$1.75. I get a check, and I'm still on the list. And when you Google it, I'm ground pounder number 2. So that.
As far as that, I mean, did you ever want to pursue more roles or anything like that, or is it kind of something that if it pops up, it pops up?
Yeah, I think it's more if it pops up, it pops up. I'm kind of, I train people right now. I train my coach's son, Trevor, in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And he, unfortunately, his senior year didn't get a senior year. So he's got limited matches. He's had to go to Utah for some matches. And right now his team's in for CIF duels.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to wrestle through the summer, make up some of his season. And I also train one of my ex-wrestlers, Dante Taramani.
Mm.
He owns the Mexicatessen. Dante's right here in Monterey Park on Atlantic. Shout out to the Mexicatessen. He wrestled for me in junior high and high school. I went to school with his brother. His brother went on to be he wrestled with me and went on to be a doctor. And before he left, he told me, hey, can you help my brother out and get him on your little kids program? So he used to wrestle on my junior high program. He did really good. Senior year, he took 4th in state.
Wow.
And was CIF champ. And, he was great. He was one of our best wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his son, Dante Jr., I trained, and he's a hockey player.
Okay.
He's strictly hockey. And he got an opportunity right out of high school to play for a team called the New Jersey 87s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I train in this garage. He's over here doing his work. He better do his work. But he's over here lifting as I'm talking to you.
Uh-huh.
He played for the 87s. Last year he got Rookie of the Year for the whole league.
Nice.
And then COVID hit, so they had to send him home at the end right when the playoffs started. So they won the league because they had the best record.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went back this year and he got the MVP.
Wow.
So now he's got 2 years on the amateur team right out of high school. So he's going to go to Lawrence University and play hockey there. So that's in Wisconsin. So that's what we're getting ready for now, is getting him stronger and
Yeah, I feel like your workouts have always been very unique, and like you were kind of doing like some of the CrossFit stuff before CrossFit blew up. What did you just like take bits and pieces from different styles and just throw it together, or like where did that all come from? Because you were doing some really cool stuff before anybody was doing that, like mainstream.
Yeah. A lot of it's common sense. If you really, I watch the athletics, I didn't know much about hockey. I didn't know what the blue line and the red line and I thought, why don't you just go in there and cream the goalie and you have a free goal? And, you can't do that. I didn't know all the rules.
Mm.
I just thought you just go out there and fight. I go, why even bring the sticks? Just go out there and fight. But so I just looked at the sport. I looked at the dynamics. What is he doing? What's he pushing off of? And I try and keep things close to that. And I'm pretty good with numbers. When I was coaching at Bishop Amont, I was in charge of the weightlifting. And during season, I could get people's maxes up. And a lot of people were curious, how do you do that? Because everyone has this assumption you maintain strength during the season. But I could get their maxes up. I play with the percentages and numbers. And the good things would happen. I got guys stronger, more physical, faster, better endurance. Me personally, when you're in a combat sport, strength is, if all things being equal, yeah, of course, the stronger guy will have it at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest, guts, knowledge, and speed are far more important when it comes to a fight. I mean, speed kills.
Yeah.
And you got a guy who's just not afraid of getting winged as he's coming in. And he's got the speed and, just add strength to that character and you got a fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I did a lot of wrestling stuff. Like when I went to camp in Oregon, I went on a tour, went to Canada and Europe to wrestle. Mm-hmm. At camp, we had some unique training stuff I brought back. And I was barely 21 at the time.
Okay.
So I started a little bit of the unique, and I always look for that. I see people in athletics. Why are they doing this and why are they doing that? And I kind of watch it. I don't like to copy what they're doing unless I'm familiar with what it's doing, and I'm familiar. I try and get familiar with what the numbers represent. Like it's not easy to get someone tired. A monkey can do it. You could go into a gym and a guy can make you do 500 push-ups. You're tired and you think you had a good workout, but is it practical for your needs? Is it practical for a MMA guy? Is it practical for a wrestler? Is it practical for a hockey player? Well, no, it's not. What are you gaining from it? So I break it down in different ways, and I studied a lot of Marv Marinovich's stuff. He has some unique stuff. I watch like what gymnasts do. Movement stuff, because that's one place I felt like I was always challenged at, was full range of motion. I think an MMA guy, less maxing and more fluid motion, explosiveness.
I remember you would bring down the chains from the ceiling.
Yeah, the chains. And you guys would do all that, the pulls, the push, the flies. That, and then TRX bands came out right after that.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, the first time I ever saw TRX stuff was when you brought them out. You were very excited about it. Like, this shit's going to change the game.
Yeah. And TRX bands to some degree have been used. And I think I saw what happened was a guy had some rope hookups in Venice Beach, and he was just doing his workout. He was like a gymnast type, bohemian type, long hair and older man, good shape. And he was doing handstand push-ups and pikes, and he was doing the legs straight out on the rings, dips, and then he had the like homemade TRX bands, and they were made out of the luggage racks. So I eventually just cut the PVC pipe, put them in as handles, wrapped the luggage wraps, and instead of paying $80-something for TRX bands, I just put those up in the gym, and went from there.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely innovative. First time I ever saw like people doing like plyos and stuff like that. I'm like, this is some next level stuff, man. I was like, I mean, I wasn't in terrible shape as I am now, but I was coming off of wrestling and everything, but that stuff got me tired, man. That beat me up.
Yeah, and it's like you say, if you have to put it in order, the knowledge, the guts. Not everyone's made for fighting. And everyone shouldn't fight. I mean, there's people that are great jiu-jitsu guys. Doesn't mean they're fighters. They're just good at jiu-jitsu. There's guys that are great wrestlers. They got a soft chin. There's guys that are just knuckleheads. They're not really outstanding in anything, but they could fight.
Yeah.
And they got solid chins and they can hit, and they're not afraid to. So I kind of like those skateboarder types that are just not afraid of getting hurt. And if you get one of them focused on their task, you get them excited, you get their knowledge up, they become more skilled at what they do. And then you start to develop that core strength and the overall power. Next thing you know, you got a fighter. It's
nice formula there. Now, is there anything else, Larry, you're still trying to do with MMA? Are you, I know you're actively training people, like individuals, people for different sports and whatnot. You've trained boxers, you're training hockey people, you're training MMA people. But are you still reffing? Are you planning on, doing anything else with like Submission Factory or any other school?
Actually, well, the plan is right now that the state is going to open up in June. So in 2-3 weeks, I got a fight at the Commerce Casino. It's an amateur fight. And then I think the week after, I'm going to do a McKee's fight in Long Beach. Both amateur fights. That's immediately on the horizon, and they say it's going to be full capacity. So we're waiting for the final word because the state can shut that all down.
Right.
I have not reffed in more. I think last March was my last fight I reffed. Early March, and then the COVID hit, and we've been shut down for a year and a couple of months.
Yeah.
The plan is to get back. I love reffing. I love being around the crowd. I love, and amateurs, you don't make a lot of money doing that. It's not a high paying gig. but I just enjoy it. Hopefully, California State Athletic Commission will allow me to do more fights and reffing, get back to reffing and judging and doing all that, because I just enjoy it. As far as wrestling, I'm coaching at Marquette High School. I'm assistant wrestling coach.
Right.
I wish to build that up before I retire. I'm probably going to be in California for, depending on what the numbers look like, probably 5 more years. Looks like I'm gonna move to Texas.
Okay.
That's the plan right now. Things change on the daily. Never know.
That's where you want to retire, out in Texas?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at all the numbers, and my retirement is going to be okay here in California. I have a good retirement working for the school district, and I put into a couple 401ks and what that 13OB, whatever that one is, and that's a pretty good one. So I just let it ride. It's moderate gains. So they're going to pay out pretty good. I got CalPERS, which pays out more than the Social Security.
Right.
So when you get it all together, it's a decent pay. It's more than I'm making hustling around working now. I could still hopefully just judge at that time.
Yeah.
Weekends. But my money's going to go farther in Texas.
Right.
Everything's less expensive,
For sure. A lot of people going there right now. You really quickly, you mentioned judging. And you would have the perfect, answer, or you may not, but I've always kind of thought that the people they have as MMA judges for the most part are terrible. Like they have, they're not fighters. I don't know how they, get in there and have so much influence, but it's been that way for a long time. I mean, I think you're starting to see a little bit more of like former fighters or people familiar with combat sports.
Here's the problem, and not so with all of them, because I think a guy like Frank Trigg is amazing.
Right.
I actually, as a referee, I think Chris Lieben is a good referee. Very conscientious and listens to, he's a guy, if I have to talk to him about something, he pays the ultimate respect. He'll listen and absorb it. And he's almost apologetic for that. No, it's just a little thing. But he's such a good guy. And Frank Trigg's an amazing ref. And there's a few others. But overall, we've had some problems with some fighters being refs or judges.
I see.
Sometimes, like a fighter comes in and he thinks he knows the MMA game. In fact, there's a lot of coaches that don't even know how the scoring system works. And they argue with the scoring system. The scoring system is established. In other words, I tell people before I start kind of going through the spiel, do not rewrite the Bible and do not reinvent the wheel. Listen to what I'm saying. You probably have ideas. Great. But it's not going to go nowhere. It's just going to frustrate you. This is the established scoring system. When John McCarthy put this together, he was a genius. He really, he had to make grappling and striking somehow even out to a certain degree, like certain submission attempts, just like certain striking attempts. Just because a guy gets a good punch in doesn't mean he's winning the fight. There's 3 categories. There's the grappling, and there's the striking, and then there's the ring control, the everything else that goes with it, the controlled aggression, what have you. You have to, if you the word you're looking for, basically, and I don't think the commissions like us to use the word, but in lieu of another word, just to simplify, damage. If you've got me in an armbar and I'm struggling with it, but I get out of it, like the round, if the round ends, what have you, that's some serious points in your corner. No different than if I knocked you on your butt legitimately, where you were almost out and the ref almost stopped the fight with a punch. They almost got to even out. The job of the ref is to arbitrarily determine which one was more damaging. What was going to stop the fight. The referee is a good indication of it sometimes. If he's a good ref, he's really on top of it when something's happening.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just hanging back. Like if there's something, like especially in the amateurs, we cannot allow an arm to break in the amateurs.
Mm.
So when it gets to full extension and, the thought is you're an amateur, we want you to go back to work on Monday. We're going to save you. But
Right.
if it's a choke, good night. You're going to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Because a choke's not as dangerous. Well, in the pros, it's a little bit different. I'm going to let that arm break. If you don't tap out, or people don't realize is if you scream out in pain,
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference between a ki and screaming like your sister. When you scream like your sister, that's a tap out. And some people have a hard time with that one. It is what it is. Back in the day, I had no guidance when I first started reffing underground shows and doing all that, and eventually King of the Cage. I had no guidance. As I was doing the UFC fights, I was asking questions and John was guiding me. So I had a little bit better awareness of the ref game. Before that, I was like, things didn't look good. I would stop things. I felt better safe than sorry. Now we could see things a certain way. When a guy's head is bouncing off the mat,
right,
he may have a hard head, but that's not a good look. Chances are a ref's going to stop that.
Uh-huh.
If a guy falls face first without stopping the fall with his hands and knees, hits the mat but gets up, well, chances are you're going to stop that.
Right.
That's an involuntary motion. And if someone wants to demonstrate that before the fight, if they want to fall face first with their hands at their side and say that, I'll consider it. Until then, that's an involuntary motion. When things are certain, people get flash knocked out, you're knocked out. You if you're not in it for 2-3 seconds, that's 2 or 3 dangerous seconds that you're not in control of your destiny. And it's up to us to be your ego.
Yeah.
It could be thankless. The funny thing is, I've made a questionable call on one guy here and there. The other side thought it was the greatest call in the world. And then at the next show, it's vice versa.
Right.
So
it's never gonna be perfect. Yeah.
Emotions. I say, when the coach is in the corner, he's emotionally involved in that fight. Mm-hmm. So his judgment's skewed. Mm-hmm. I have to remove the emotions and just judge the fight or ref it.
Right. Huh? I mean, good answer there, man. But yeah, I see what you're talking about. But yeah, you do start seeing some of those former fighters in there as referees and whatnot. I forgot Lieben was doing it. I remember seeing Frank Trigg in there a lot, but they're at least a little more familiar. But you're right. Sometimes you got to maybe take yourself a little bit away from it. Like not.
Here's
so
the difference. Mm-hmm. You got to realize this. A lot of people, especially fighters, have asked about it. A guy like Frank Trigg is a learning machine. He takes notes. He calls John McCarthy on the phone. He's called Herb Dean. The few times I worked with him, we've talked to each other. He's a learning machine. He wants to know every aspect of everything. He wants like a college student. Chris Lieben is very gracious in taking whether it's criticism or positive criticism or he just okay, thanks. I'm so and totally different than his character on the TV show.
Right.
He's totally he's a great. I love working with Chris. Huh. Chris will ask, he's still just, hey, Larry, and he'll ask a question. And, I love working with him. He's easy to work with. He's very calm. There's been a few other fighters that, maybe here and there, but overall, I remember going to shows back in the day and they put fighters and they're drinking beers and they're not, they have a grudge against this jiu-jitsu school and the cards show it.
So that's a good point. It's a good point.
Or the guy's only a wrestler. So they give it to the jiu-jitsu guy, and then it's like, well, the wrestler kicked that guy's butt. Or even worse, when you're a wrestler and the wrestler's just on top of the jiu-jitsu guy, the jiu-jitsu guy's close to locking in submissions, and the judge is a wrestler, and he gives it to the wrestler.
Right.
I've had all ends of that. And going back to submissions, a guy could have his ankles around my neck. That's nothing. That's nothing. If I'm putting punches on him from the top position, even if I'm in his guard, people come up to me and say, he's trying to get a triangle. Okay. When it gets behind his knee, then it's like what I consider a catch.
Right.
I'll consider it. But just because I'm holding your neck in place with my ankles, yeah, I know what he's trying to do, but that doesn't mean it's dangerous to the other guy. It's only dangerous when it gets, it's not there. It's only dangerous when it gets behind the knee. It is what it is. If a guy, I've seen guys go for arm bars on the wrong arm, from the bottom, the legs come around, and the coaches are mad. They lose the decision, and he was going for arm bars. That wasn't an arm bar. That was by far the wrong arm. He did it. He wasn't even close to getting him in any type of threat of a submission hold. Catch it, put in if a guy has a rear naked choke and he's got his legs wrapped around, for some reason the guy survives it and he's gagging and he's a little dizzy after it, but he didn't go out, the round ended. If he held that for more than a minute, well, I'm gonna give him credit. He took his back,
Right. It was working. It was something that was in serious contention of ending the fight. Yeah.
Potential fight ending. Yeah.
There you go. I wanted to switch it up a little bit. Just wanted to sneak this kind of question in here because it's kind of a hot topic of the of the fighting world right now, right? You have like these kind of I don't know, what do you call them? Kind of like circus shows these days, man. Like, you have legitimate MMA, you have legitimate boxing, but they've kind of started mixing things up these days with like the Paul brothers and all that stuff on Triller and whatnot. What's your thoughts on that? Is that good for the sport? Bad for the sport?
I thought about pitching for ex-fighters where they could wear headgear, shin guards, kind of like the amateur rules, no twisting heel hooks, and let them have a basic career with each other, kind of like a recreational league, have 2-minute rounds. I thought about things like that, and I thought it would be good for the sport. Like if you allowed them to fight on these amateur shows, it would sell tickets, and these amateur fighters that are coming through would get recognition. It is what it is. I tell people, people, if you're not a name, you're only as good as the tickets you sell.
Right.
Many times I've had people call me and say, "Hey, Larry, I've got this guy from Brazil. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's great. He's going to be the next big thing, the next Vita belt for whatever." Oh, sounds good. Okay, I'll throw his name around, see if promoters are interested. What's his asking price? Oh, for, maybe $50,000. And I'm like, what? For these local shows? Are you kidding?
That's not even UFC money.
Dude, do the math. If you can't get 50,000 people at $1 to watch the fight, you're lucky if you get 1,500 people to show up. You're going to pay 50,000 for you. Come on, be realistic. Plus, I've helped out a few guys here and there, and they pull guard. They'll butt scoop. They'll do things like that, and it's like, ooh, promoters hate that. Yeah, he's good at submit. Yeah, he's good at jiu-jitsu. He's very good, but he's not going to sell tickets. And if he can't sell tickets, he's almost worthless. So when you have the Paul brothers, when you have Conor McGregor, these doing these other things, is it good for the sport? Well, it's getting another crowd to look at it.
Right. Okay.
I guarantee you, if Mayweather decides to fight Conor McGregor in MMA, that will probably be the biggest pay-per-view of the decade.
Right.
It'll be. I mean, you'd have to have it at a stadium, like a soccer stadium in a foreign country. It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. And the truth is, just like when Randy Couture fought James Toney, it'll probably end the same.
Yeah. True. Very true.
But is it good for the sport? Well, when you have a large pay-per-view, whoever's on that undercard should kiss their asses because they're making more money because of it.
Yeah. You know, like
recognition.
When Fox first got the UFC, I was like, man, that's a huge deal. And it was a great, headliner. It was Dos Santos challenging Cain Velasquez for the title. And then, fights happen however they happen, and that fight, I mean, it was a good knockout, but the fight kind of shit the bed, and it really just, I think from there was a downward spiral from people just didn't want to, the new audience, your core audience would stick with it, but the new audience just decided like, yeah, this isn't for me. I think had they shown an undercard fight, or a few of them, man, the numbers would have, skyrocketed, because afterwards, like it just became like a fourth, what do you call it? Like an afterthought. I mean, it was like, yeah, I checked out that UFC thing. It's no good, and just that one fight, I think did it. I mean, that's my opinion on that.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I've been to amateur shows where there's been 400 people in the audience, 300 people in the audience, and just had a night of the most amazing fights. People, if you want to get to an amateur show, like on the 19th, I believe, of June, Commerce Casino is going to have a fight. If you've never been to a live MMA show, get to it. You'll be surprised. There are some superstars waiting to happen. I remember when AJ McKee was fighting on his dad's MMA shows. AJ's an acrobat. He was doing now he's on his way to he's going to give Archuleta a tough match.
Yeah,
it's he's undefeated. Legitimately, and he puts on a show, and you can't I can't write him off no matter who he fights. I mean, it's I guess you could say Archuleta is the favored, but you can't write off the team.
He just putting people away.
Yeah,
he's finishing them. Last, a couple things here before we close out, Larry. I think at some point, man, I think it would be really cool later on, way down the line, maybe we get a bunch of bouncers and just talk bouncer stories, man, because you must have a bunch. I got some too,
I've got some great. You know who I used to work with at Red Rock in West Hollywood?
What was that?
Herb Dean.
Oh yeah,
and John Marsh. And yeah, we got some great stories, man.
Yeah, did you work with Boss Rutan too, or wasn't he a bouncer too? Or
no, but I never worked as a bouncer with Boss Rutan. We're just friends.
Okay.
Back in the Black Angus days, years before the UFC, Roland Serra, who runs the Cage Rage shows in Arizona, he used to do these guys. It would be like on a Wednesday night for the ladies' night. They'd bring in these strippers, these dude strippers. And Roland Serra is the promoter for Cage Rage. Well, one of the guys that used to come was Joe Pardo.
Huh.
And Joe Pardo fought in the UFC once, and he's a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guy. Great guy. But I met him then, way back in the day, and we were talking jiu-jitsu and wrestling and things like that. A good 2-3 years before the UFC even came out on TV. And we hit it off. We were cool. He didn't either way. He didn't see me or him. We were just cool with each other. He was just a humble guy, and we're when I talk to him now, it's always good. It's always good.
And so the last thing, Larry, I wanted to throw out there, I didn't want to make it a big topic of the show, but I got to say, man, I'm glad you're healthy.
Thank
there was, you had your battle with cancer and you kicked its ass, man. I was like,
it was a tough one.
I was like, when I saw that, I was like, oh man, that sucks. But then your attitude online was just like, you know what? It's like a fight. I'm gearing up for it. I'm going to kick cancer's ass. And you did. I was like, dang, he's not messing around with this, man. So, definitely kudos to you for your attitude for that. Cause like, that really, I mean, a lot of people, are gonna deal with cancer, in their lifetime. It's what, like 1 in 3 people or something like that, maybe even just half of the population almost. And so seeing, somebody like you go through it and be very transparent, it taught me a little something just in case I ever get to that point. It's like,
I hope not.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people, got something great out of that, man. Even though, it's a very unfortunate thing, that, I mean, I'm glad to have seen you get over it,
Thank you.
I think you had 2 bouts, right?
Yes. Actually, after the first bout, a couple weeks later, I caught a life-threatening infection. I haven't really said a lot. I wasn't, for the last week, I couldn't eat, couldn't hold nothing down. I was like, I thought it was a strong flu or something. I was trying to ride it out one day. The last 2 days, going into October, right after the surgery, just a few weeks after the surgery, I remember it was about 4 something in the morning, almost 5, and I couldn't sleep lying down flat. So I slept on the couch sitting up, and I couldn't go to sleep. I was awake. I was delirious, trying to watch TV, and I just leaned over to the arm of the couch to try and get comfortable, and I woke up on the floor. Ooh. And I just realized something was wrong. So I called 911. The ambulance took me in. For 3.5 weeks. I was in the hospital with tubes coming out of my body. The infection was severe. Eesh. And the doctor told me if I would have waited any longer, it could have killed me. And that was a wake-up call. Now, whenever little things happen in my body, what I feel, I'm going to be on top of it more. I'm supposed to do blood work every 6 months. I do it every 3 months. That's because I want to just be on top of it. If, when it comes to prostate cancer, I tell people, that they have this conception. There's through the blood work, and there's another way to check for it. They have to physically check for it. I would avoid that as much as possible. It was, in fact, working for the California State Athletic Commission is probably what saved my life, because every year I have to get a complete physical. And if I could get out of that one part of it, I would. I know a couple of times I did. Right. And the one time where I didn't get out of it, and I actually checked, is the one time where through other tests found out I had it. It's a silent killer. If you're in your mid-30s and up, I beg you. And a lot of people have jokes. Okay, great, haha. But I beg you, please get checked regularly. It will sneak up on you. It's an easy one to cure. Of all the cancers to get, it's probably one of the easiest ones to deal with. But at the same time, it's a silent killer. It could take you out, and it'll be too late. Yeah. Please get checked often. Get checked. Stay on top of your doctor's appointments. There's cancer's my mom passed away at 54 from cancer. Right. I'm going to be 57 tomorrow.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. I'm going to outlive her. I've lived longer than her life, and she was a tremendous asset to the community, to the family, and it kills me to we could have probably saved her with today's knowledge. Right. And I was beneficial from it. Trust me, this plays on my mind quite often, and cancer's with me all the time. It's just not in me at this point. But I always think about it. I'm always, I'm worried if I feel a lump somewhere in my neck, or I want to find out what's going on. I don't man it up and try and pretend I'm a tough guy. And and I tell other people the same thing. Get checked. I don't want to hear bad news from you.
Yeah, I mean, that's helpful. Like, well, a lot of us, guys are like that. Like, whatever, I'll tough it out. I'm not, or like you said, we don't want to do the whole, there's no other way to put it. Do the fingers up the butt thing, and I mean, if that's what's going to save your life, or get you some preventative care or something there.
Listen, here's the thing. Yeah, it's a big joke. When you're young, that's a big joke. But as you get older, if that check would have saved your life and you're on your deathbed, what are you going to think of?
Right.
How selfish it is of you to put your family through it, your parents, your brothers, sisters, kids, whatever. Come on, man. Just do it. Just do it. It's not the most pleasant situation to go through, but do it. Just, man, if it will be death, it's beyond worth it. Right. After going through everything I went through, I'll be honest with you, if I had to get a check 3 times a year, I would do it. I wouldn't like it, but I would do it. It is what it is. You just gotta, cancer doesn't come to a convenient spot or doesn't hit you at a convenient time. And it I still physically haven't recovered from all the damage that was caused in my body.
Right.
The radiation I was receiving in that area caused some damage to my pancreas. So basically my body's not producing enough sugar, not insulin, to battle sugar. So I really have to focus more on water and sugarless drinks. Try and eat a little better. And I lost a lot of muscle. I mean, I was friggin' huge, and
you used to look like a pro wrestler, man.
I lost a lot of muscle, man, and it's hard to work out. I get tired really fast. So I just gotta build past that. I know I'm better off than a lot of other people when I go to my urologist and I see other people there, and I know I'm better off. My doctor tells me I'm better off. I look good. I look better than your average person in this situation, but I just want to get my life back, and I want to be able to swim and jog and lift some weights, get back on the mat, wrestle a little bit. My nephew's going to come for the summer. He's to spend the summer with me, and the whole time I'm going to train the heck out of him. Going to be a senior year next year in high school. He's a wrestler.
Nice.
So I'm going to abuse him. I'm just like I used to abuse his dad, my nephew, my brother's son. This is my brother's grandson. So I'm going multi-generation with the abuse. He's going to be swimming, running, lifting, wrestling. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. So I just wish I could
champions,
get out.
Right? Yeah. A legacy of building champions.
Yeah.
There you go. So, Larry, anything else you want to throw out there? Any, shout outs, or if you want people to reach you online or anything like that?
Hey, you know what? I just want to thank the MMA community for all the years, all the good and bad. I know a lot of people have funny things to say. That's okay. It's part of it. But the people that reached out when I was sick, you find out who your real friends are. I just want to thank them for the encouragement and for the love and support. The people that are involved in the fights, nothing personal. I'm there to ref your fight. I wish you luck, but nothing personal. If I got to stop your fight, I'm going to stop your fight. Shout out to those people who are going to get in there with the guts to get in there. To the Cameo crew and the California State Athletic Commission crew, your kind of family away from home. I look forward to working with all of them again and seeing everybody. I look forward to continuing to coach as much as possible the sport I love, wrestling. Big shout out to Mike Big, Herm Dean, original Submission Factory guys. I already gave Matt his props, and
we gotta find that guy, man. He's in hiding. I gotta find him.
Charlie Valencia, one of the originals from the Submission Factory. Anthony Valencia. I mean, there's so many names that just were instrumental in MMA getting things going. all the promoters that had kept faith in us, and we continue to work with. Thank you for putting out shows as often as you do. I know you got screwed this last year, and we'll do what we can to make them up. I know the first few shows are probably going to be packed. People are dying to get to these shows. So good luck to everybody. And once again, may the best man win.
There you go. There you have it, everyone. The local living legend, Larry Landless. For everybody listening at home, I appreciate it. Thank you. Fuck you and good night. Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast, and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.